Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
I know that you all come here for entertainment, education, and to get away from the world for a while. I have made this statement on all of my social media channels, and I'm going to make this statement here. This is not a time for pretty words. These are not the days to blind our eyes. Racism is real. Racism exists. Racism is embedded in our culture. I, Lonnie Scott, and as an extension of myself, Weird Web Radio, stand and support our black brothers and sisters. We are all in this together. I will do all I can to be better, to do better, to speak better, and to use this platform better. I have worked very hard to keep racists and bigots from my show. I will continue to do so with all of my abilities. There is no peace nor shelter here for any racism. The solution isn't on just one of us. It's on all of us. We must do the hard work to fix it in ourselves so we can go forward and fix it in our society. I appreciate your time and your attention. Black Lives Matter. Hey gang, welcome to another episode of Weird Web Radio. This episode features the one, the only, Olivia, known as the Witch of Wonderlust on YouTube. You may know who she is, and if you do, you're among the thousands of people who have been following her YouTube channel, and it's really cool and quite an honor to get to know her and develop that friendship. She's a really good soul, and I've enjoyed her videos on YouTube for a long time, and I'm really happy to bring her to you, my audience, hoping that we're going to pick her up some more fans. Olivia's bio says that she's better known as the Witch of Wonderlust on YouTube and Instagram. She's a 23-year-old creator who hopes to invoke curiosity in her audience. She's aiming to give them the tools and the inspiration to teach others how to think rather than what to think. And that's a subject that comes up in the interview. Her content focuses on the occult and spirituality side of things, though there are flavors of travel, creativity, and lighthearted videos just for fun. And I'll vouch you'll enjoy all of them. I know I do. When Olivia isn't making videos, she's taking photos, reading, traveling, pole dancing, and drinking tea all at the same time. I've watched the videos. I don't think I've seen any of those occur at the same time, but we all get the point, right? Olivia, like I said, is really good people, and she's got a lot of really cool stories. She really opened up and shared things that have happened in her life that have led her to witchcraft and how she's developed in her practice. And I really hope you enjoy that. I don't want to stand between you and her any longer, so enjoy the show and stay weird out there, my friends. And we are recording. Olivia, a.k.a. the Witch of Wonderlust. Welcome to Weird Web Radio. It is a really cool honor to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Oh, I'm glad you're excited. That certainly helps with the process, right?
Yes. Like, when is this over?
Right. Now, I think, well, I do know because, I always hit up all my different lists and I tell them, if you want to reach out privately or anything and ask questions or anything of the guests that I have coming up and to go ahead and do so. And mostly I got a lot of feedback of, wow, I can't believe you're going to have her on your show. And of all the people I've had on my show, that doesn't happen a lot. So really,
Oh,
I think you should give yourself a really good pat on the back. You are a genuine rising star in YouTube and witchcraft.
Yeah, I feel weird about that. I mean, not in a bad way, but it's just strange to me to think that I guess people notice me because I still feel like the 23-year-old with a camera that just posts videos for fun on YouTube. And, I just did one of the Tipsy Tarot things with my friend, and that's not like educational. It's just us drinking and reading tarot for people. That's very like YouTube-esque content. So it's just funny to hear that people are excited, I guess, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you have. I know for myself, one thing I noticed when I found your channel, the way YouTube does, you're watching things and you end up down that YouTube rabbit hole of things on the
Hmm.
right hand column. And I kind of found you that way, and I wish I could remember the first video it was that I saw, but I know you were reviewing something that I already knew and loved, and I thought, I wonder what her opinion on it is, because you see so many YouTube channels, especially, and I won't name names. I would never do that to anybody. People get fulfillment out of something, then go do you get fulfillment.
Right.
But there is a lot of really bad stuff out there.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of it. And one thing I immediately noticed for yours was you have a background and a vibe to the whole thing that makes people feel welcoming. You have a voice that makes people feel, I think, willing to sit and listen. And you are pretty good at explaining not only what it is that you found, but I think a genuine thing about you is that you can see the excitement when you're excited about something. You can tell that you didn't just read something, you tried it out. And I think that's fantastic.
Well, I am a very bad liar. So I'm one of those people that my mom growing up, she would always tell me, she's like, you need to, be aware of how your face looks sometimes when somebody's telling you something, or, when you're talking about something, she's like, you're very like easy to read when it comes down to that of it's very easy to tell what you're thinking about something when you have an opinion. So be careful. And I think that's, I was actually kind of worried that that was going to be a weakness in YouTube, because a lot of it is, show and tell essentially. But it seemed to be a strength now, because people trust me, hopefully, because I'm telling the truth of what I think and my experiences of, X review or X experience. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the majority of the content on your show is, of course, concerning or revolving around witchcraft and more occult related materials. You yourself call yourself the Witch of Wonderlust. I'm going to make a giant leap in assumption and say you identify at some point as a witch. Would that be correct?
Yes, and that didn't happen probably until the last 2 years, um, which is strange. I never considered myself a witch or any. I didn't ever consider myself anything up until the last 2 years. So the title was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna commit to it and put it on my YouTube, and was like, that's that.
Okay, so 2 years ago, or whatever it happened to be in that timeline, what was it that happened that you encountered or did that said, this is for me, this is who I am?
I don't know. I think it's weird because people will ask me kind of, oh, when did you know you were a witch, or when did you find witchcraft? And it was kind of like a snowball effect. I guess technically I would count my practice about 10 years now, only because that was kind of when I started connecting the dots of what the word occult meant, and kind of actually being able to find resources on my own. Whereas previous to that, it was just kind of like, why do I feel connected to this? Why is this something that I'm curious about? Why is, I just had questions, but I didn't have any definitions or words for the things that I was wondering. And I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I had my train of thought and it's gone now.
Oh, that's okay. I'm basically saying, you said 2 years ago,
Oh,
is
yeah.
when you decided you were a witch, and how did you come to that conclusion?
So I think, oh my God. All right, you can put this in here, but I'm not proud of it. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not proud of it.
I'm going to
Um,
tell you before you tell me. a lot of us aren't proud of things we did in the beginning.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, so yeah, my practice was very on the down low. It really wasn't, nobody knew about it. Nobody in my life up until about 2 years ago. And what happened was I moved out 4 years ago. I moved away from my family and away from my home in Colorado. And I moved out to Los Angeles. And all of a sudden this epiphany hit me that I'm an adult. I can do what I want now. I can, post what I want. I can buy what I want. I can do and go where I want. And um, that kind of just hit me all of a sudden after, 18 years of being told to shut up and sit down and ask to go to the bathroom. All of a sudden I can make all my own decisions. And I bought some tarot cards. I hid them from my roommate and from my significant other because I was terrified of what they would think. And I found a community online from a very unreliable source, Tumblr.
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you listening, please don't do that. But, the community aspect was something that I had never had. So being able to have other people calling themselves witches made me more comfortable to come with that term, and then doing research on that term of where that term came from, of the root word, of all of that jazz, because I'm incredibly obsessive like that. I came to terms that I liked the term. I liked the history behind it, and I liked the fact that it used to be a bad thing and now there's like power coming back to it. So that's kind of where I came up with the fact that I'm like, yeah, I'm a witch now.
All right. So you said your practice really kind of started about 10 years ago. By my math, that makes you around 13 years old. That's the same age I got started. I'd like to say it was a lot sooner in the past than it was. So I'm getting the idea you were in a very restrictive, controlling environment. And if I'm getting the wrong idea, please correct me. But if you're going to enter into occult and the witchcraft practices or even study it, how first, I guess, are you getting access to these things at 13, 14 years old? How are you practicing or hiding them from your family if you think they're that their disapproval is that strong?
See, that's the part where I'm a bad liar, but I'm very sneaky. So,
She's a ninja that can't be caught.
Exactly. Yes. So I wouldn't say I grew up in a restrictive, like it wasn't super controlling. I mean, back then I think it was more controlling than it is now, obviously. And it slowly became less and less restrictive as I grew up. But yeah, 13, 14, right when I was leaving middle school, entering high school for the 10th grade. And it was just like this kind of thing, this transition of like, I am interested in the things that people don't believe in or the things that people do believe in. I want to know why they believe in these things. I want to know, where they came up with these beliefs. And I was raised Christian. My dad is Filipino and my mom is Irish. So there's a lot of Catholicism there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad was much more restrictive because he was raised in the Philippines, very Catholic. And they turned Christian when they came here. And so I would visit my family every year, my Filipino family. And there was always this sense of like, they're Christian now, so they don't believe in the saints. But one memory I can remember very well was one of my aunties came to me and was like, listen, if you ever feel afraid of anything, like if you think, evil spirits or the devil's coming after you, you get a red candle and you light that to Saint Michael, and ain't nothing fucking with Saint Michael. And I mean, she didn't say that word, but that was like her energy. And I was just like, that is so strange. And I think that immediate point was kind of like, huh. So I started gathering candles. I started gathering, more history books rather than occult books, because where I was living in Colorado, there were no tarot decks in Barnes and Noble. There weren't strictly occult books in Barnes and Noble. Mainly they were Christian based. So yeah, and I posted something like that. That was one of my first videos, and somebody was like, "Oh, well, you're stupid if you didn't see any tarot decks. They've been around in Barnes and Noble for years." And I was like, "Not in mine. Believe me, I looked." And on top of that, like, I don't know where I would have gotten the money to even purchase them and take them home anyway, because my mom would have been like, "Satan." But like that just wasn't a thing. But I learned to read with playing decks, like playing cards, because that was a thing. I did a lot of, I don't remember the word, but it's divination with using books, when you flip to a certain page and put your finger on a word or a sentence or something.
Yeah, bibliomancy.
There it is. Yes,
yep.
That's the one. Yeah, so I did that a lot. I loved books growing up. And then a lot of it was just like, how could I do this without it looking like I'm doing this? So we would go to church, and a lot of the time I would try to, I guess, reach out to God or to Jesus and ask them, like, okay, like, what's your deal? Like, where'd you come from? And I would try to get those questions rather than like just accepting that it was there. And I think that was one of those things that I was asking pastors and, the youth group leaders. And so I think it was more of my research phase rather than my straight practicing phase. My practicing phase, when I actually started feeling like I was casting things, probably started around like 17, probably 17, 18. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I like your story. You showed yourself to be very resourceful in finding these things. That sort of dedication against that much, things against you, would often drive a lot of people away. And that's a really cool way to go about it. I had to do something a little similar, but not quite that intensely. I wasn't raised by any religious people.
Okay.
Just allowed to be curious. They still didn't like witchcraft, though.
Dang it.
All right. So you get into your practicing days. Do you remember, or something you're willing to share at any rate, when you had your first real, like, intentional success when you get into practicing what we call witchcraft?
I'm trying. See, I was not very powerful back then because I didn't have a lot of resources. So, but I think the spells that I did, I think, had an effect, but not something so ground shaking that was like, wow, I did that. Up until
Yeah.
it's going to sound so funny. And sometimes I chalk it up to coincidence, whatever. I'm going to say that it's mine. I'm going to say it's mine.
Yeah. Coincidence is the word that normal people use so they can sleep at night.
I like that. That's going in my journal.
Yeah, it should.
So I remember I was at the DMV, and because I was transferring my my driver's license from Colorado to California. And I'm at the DMV and I'm sitting there, and I remember, for those of you who have never been in one or, don't have experience with the DMV, they set it up. It's a long, long, long line. You can be there all day, and you sit there, in groups. You take a little number, and there's like a line of desks with numbers over it, and whatever number that your number gets called to, that's the clerk that you go to run the tests and whatnot. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking at, what is it? It's 27 different employees, and they all look miserable because they work at the DMV and deal with terrible people all day. And
right.
there was one woman, and she was at the desk number 14. And I'm looking at her, and I was like, she was like smiley. She was like, very kind to everybody. And I had just moved to Los Angeles. I just turned 19, and I'm like, I really don't want to deal with somebody and have them make me feel stupid for not bringing a piece of paper or something. Like if somebody's in a good mood, they're more likely to help me out or whatever. So I'm sitting there and I remember just it like focusing so hard on trying to get my number being called over to the desk number 14. I mean, I did this so much to the point that they had a little automated voice being like, number G27, please come to the and I got to the point that like I heard it in my head calling my number to that desk. I heard it over and over and over, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm like really hoping for this. And then it happened, and I was like, the chances though, because I was in a room of hundreds of people, and there were hundreds of people going to 27 different desks. The odds are against me. So I was like, was that me? You know? And I feel like at that point, for some reason, I just had so much more confidence in myself from that little tiny piece that I was like, I think I could do this. I think there's something else that I am able to, you know, shift or have an effect on.
Yeah, I like it and take it. I like that you bring up the feeling of maybe it was coincidence, but you know, like fuck it, this is magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really important, I think, especially for anyone listening that is still debating on getting involved or even doubting the things that they've done. We don't give, and I got this thought really from a friend of mine, Kat Heath, and she's got a great book coming out soon, and another one that's already been out under the title Seo Hellrune, Essays from the Crossroads. Excellent book out there, folks. Oh. She always says that we don't give magic enough credit, that we don't demand enough out of it, that we're willing to play small and that we should be playing bigger. And I when I heard her say that, or saw her post that on Facebook once a long time ago, I thought, wow, she's so right. And that is part, I think, so many people get lazy on this, but why keeping journaling or keeping a journal can be important.
Oh my gosh, yes. This is something I preach.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, give the sermon. How has the journal been a tool for your own practice?
Oh, strap in. Okay. So so there, oh God, I don't even know where to start. Journaling is so effective in so many ways, and I think the biggest thing is I equate magic to science. It's just science we don't 100% understand yet. That's the thing, is we just need to keep running experiments. We need to keep running tests to understand how, like, what effectiveness and to what degree we actually have control over something, you know, because and so keeping a journal allows you to keep those experiments. So I have a video on my money bowl, for example. That is one of the spells that I created when I was younger that wasn't great, but the more and more I experimented with it. If I do it on a Thursday, it has more potency. If I use, you know, certain colors, it has more potency. If I do it this, and this way, it has more potency. If I cleanse it, if I don't, And taking notes, detailed notes on the days, on the moon phases, if you keep track of planetary magic, which that is a hard thing for me to do, but, you know, that's something that I want to start to include. Keeping track of all of those things adds so much to your potency and adds so much more to what you are going to understand, what your magic is actually affecting, and how you can have a bigger effect. And on top of that, you look back and see how you've grown as a practitioner. So, you know, like you look back and you're like, I cannot believe I wrote this down. But there it is, you know, the fact that you can see that you've gone from point A to point B or even point Z, that you're like, whoa, you know, if I could go back and tell little Olivia all these things. But and then keeping track of dreams or keeping track of divinations that you've done and looking back a year later and being like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this is what that divination was telling me when I asked the specific question. And I thought it was stupid. And now I'm looking back and like everything makes sense now. Journaling is so good for shadow work. Having self-awareness as a practitioner is unfortunately something that is so difficult to find in a practitioner for some reason, just because a lot of us have this otherworldly view where we feel that we have quote unquote more knowledge than somebody who does not study the occult.
Mm-hmm.
The self-awareness goes away, and I don't know why. Like you are still human, and so shadow work keeps us in line. Shadow work shows us the patterns that we have as humans, and hopefully evolves our soul a little better on the way that we're supposed to be doing in this life, if you believe in reincarnation or whatever. Journaling is important, is basically what I'm trying to get at. Please just write everything down.
Hey, I'll back that up, and I'll be the first to admit I go in and out of being really consistent with it. But you've pointed out things that are absolutely right. You'll start to notice how the magic and the things you're doing resonate with certain cycles and patterns as they reflect to you. You can check any book on the market and look for those correspondences, but that doesn't always mean that they'll add up to your practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And something else I think is really important about journaling, since the subject came out of nowhere, is that when you start to think back on the things you've done magically, you can start to doubt yourself and think, oh, maybe that was coincidence. Maybe that didn't have so much to do with what I was doing. If you have the ability to grab one of your journals and look back and see that you actually conducted spell work or something at that point, and you got this sort of result that can be tied to what you were doing within magical levels, that it helps keep your mind in that right magical mind state. That I think is so important when we're practicing these things. Well, yeah, we're all in agreement there, folks.
Oh yeah.
There was something you said, and I thought it was really insightful, that we, and by we, you're talking about those of us who are in the realm of the witchcraft and the occult,
Mm-hmm.
have got this. There's a trap we fall into sometimes of thinking, forgetting we're just human, that we somehow have more knowledge than other people. That even slips down a further slope and starts turning us into things where we're overreacting to Mercury retrograde.
Oh my gosh.
And things like that. We get way too superstitious.
Mm.
Have you fallen into any traps like that?
Oh boy. Of course I have. And especially when I first moved out to Los Angeles and gained an actual in-person community as well. There's so much going around that you're kind of pulled in different directions. And then also the Mercury retrograde. Oh my goodness. That, even people who aren't even in the occult at this point, so many people are like, it's Mercury. Yeah. And
right.
Sure. I think I'll humor that. I think that planets can where the planets are can absolutely have an energetic shift, but is it going to completely fuck up your life? No. You still you are claiming that just because the planet is in retrograde that you have lost all control. And that is just a lazy excuse for not looking at the problems that you have in a human retrospect. Because a lot of us forget that we're human. And I mean, yes, we are linked to, so a tidbit that I've been telling everybody because it's exciting for me, that I was watching Neil deGrasse Tyson's masterclass. He's an astrophysicist, very, very matter-of-fact kind of guy. I want him to be my uncle, low-key, whatever. But, he says something that in the intro where he goes, whenever somebody's feeling sad, I like to remind them that there are atoms in your body that can be linked and are the same atoms that we find in stars.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's not woo-woo. He's not occult. He's not, no. He's a scientist, he's very much based in that. And the fact that that is his way of comforting somebody, the fact that we are all unified. Yes, I think that is, magical about that. But you are still in a human body. You're still living this life as a human. Whatever you may believe is after this. So, oh,
You must have cats.
I don't. That was just the kitchen.
No. Well, you
by
have
itself.
ghosts. Yeah,
Yeah,
we can talk
you
about
guys
that
keep
later.
down, please. Yeah, but the idea that we are more than human just because we are, you know, studying the occult, or you are believing in something X, Y, and Z is a silly thing to me, because you are still human. You are still part of this mortal physical world. So you still need to apply those rules here. Whereas, people will ask me like, "Oh, can you float things like in your photos in real life?" And I'm like, "No, it's Photoshop." And, and then they delete their account and I'm like, "What happened?" But um, it's frustrating to me because that takes away. I think people don't view humanity as beauty, and there's so much beauty in being a human. And I think we just overlook that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that humans are like, why are we doing this? But there is beauty in being human. We are intelligent creatures. We are, we have so much direct effect on the food web, on the environmental web, and we have the ability to do one or the other thing. And that's kind of amazing that we do have that power. So the thought that like, mere humans, no, humans are powerful in their own. And I think that gets looked over a lot. And especially in the occult world, people are like, "Oh, but I'm a witch, so I'm better than all the other regular humans." It's like, you're really not, though. You're just a person who has a different field of study.
That's right. You're not better. You're different.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like that thing about Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's a really cool insight to pick up from the things that he says.
Yeah.
In my own centering exercise that I do every day, there's a part in there where you acknowledge that you say, "I am descended from ancient stars," and I think that's a really cool thing, that we are connected to those
Yeah.
immense, powerful things in the universe.
It's so
something
cool.
worth contemplating.
Mm-hmm. And he states that it's like a sense of belonging for him. And I was like, that's nice.
Yep, I agree with him.
Mm.
So when you reflect back on your earliest practices, kind of leading up to where we are now in the timeline, when you think back, what do you think might be your most important lesson from all these experiences so far?
Only one, huh?
I'll take two if you want to give me two.
Well, my most important lesson. I think this is my lifelong pursuit. Is my quote unquote most important lesson is curiosity will never be something that should be outdated or forgotten. I think that's like my biggest lesson, because I feel like that's kind of my purpose, I guess, is to invoke curiosity in people, whether that be about the occult or not. That could be about cats, and like people still don't really know why they purr sometimes, or why they chirp, and you're just curious, and that's now your field of study for the rest of your life. I don't know, but the biggest lesson is just curiosity is something so deeply important to me, and important for just kind of the well-being of people. Oh, here it is. Okay, this is how I'm going to say it.
Fair.
My most important lesson was to stop thinking, or to stop just taking everything at face value of what to think, and start thinking how to think. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so to not just be like, "Oh yeah, that's what I should be thinking." I'm going to take that and take the resources that I have and the tools that I have and say, "This is how I should be thinking about this."
Yep. Critical thinking. in a
Yes.
nutshell. Yeah,
Thank
critical
you.
thinking. It's a lost and dying art, and it makes me sad.
It is, and it's so frustrating because it just makes the world so magical.
Oh, absolutely agree. So, w- when you think about your practice now, what is your what does your practice consist of now? What is your have you formed your witchcraft into?
It's it's still very much trial and error. I really enjoy looking at my craft as a science experiment with variables and um, the hypothesis of what I think my manifestation should or will be, and then continuing it like that. I really much enjoy that structure, but most of it is just asking questions. I like to tell people that I'm very skeptical for being in the occult community. I'm a very skeptical person. However, I do think that anything is possible. So it's just kind of this back and forth of like, I believe everything, but also I believe nothing. And my current practice just kind of consists of a lot of folk magic. So I really like having physical things to represent what I'm doing. But a lot of it's more of just like boosting my life. So, my money bowl, again, that's a very popular video, and I'm glad that it is because it's one of my favorite personal spells that I've created. I like that one because I work it on a weekly basis. It reminds me to come back to what I want my finances to look like, where I want it to come from, and to have a very healthy relationship with money that I'm starting to build. Because that's a whole other rant topic that I have. But that's it's a lot of like self-awareness work, just trying to understand kind of like what I'm doing with my content right now and what I want from it. It's a lot of protection work, that you can never have too much protection, and just kind of seeing how it can affect other people in my life positively is a really big thing. Because all I know that there's a lot of discussion of like, oh, do you do spells on people without asking and da da da. I do, like, sorry, I do, but I cast spells on my mom all the time and she doesn't know it. But like, I love my mom. I want her to be protected. I want her to be loved. I want her to feel loved. And so those are the things that I'm going to cast things for her. And I want her to be financially secure. There's all these different things that I like to hit, and monthly I'll work on that. Or I like the moon, so I'm working with that. But a lot of it's research and folk magic and just like little me life stuff, rather than I can't really say that I've ever cast anything for world peace or anything.
That's an effort not worth pursuing, probably. No, I
Not for
should
one
say
person, no.
it's worth pursuing, but it's quite a wall.
Yes.
So, in there, you talked about doing spells for other people and things like that, and relating it to protection. Uh, and I completely get that. Every full moon, in fact, I do a protection ritual for everyone that I care about in my life in any way, and every guest that's ever been on my show. So now you're going to be included in those rites.
Oh, thank you.
Hope you don't mind. See, now I got permission from one person at least now.
There you go.
But it's something that I like to do on that regular cycle and time it with the moon that way. And you brought up that in that answer that you like the moon, you like to work with the moon. What is it about the moon that draws you to conduct any practice that's associated with it? What form is that taking?
I mean, it's always been, a thing. It's just in the sky. It's beautiful. It's mysterious. So you're kind of like, oh, I want to have a relationship with that. But a lot of it is I will time my rituals and my spell work around the moon. I really like doing reflecting with divination, new moons, full moons, and I like doing ritual baths. I dance a lot, so I like doing, full moon dances or things of that sort. But yeah, it's usually timing around that, and then as well as I keep the moon phase currently in mind, I like to kind of think about how that's applying to my life of like, okay, well, you know, what is currently being taken away, what is currently being kind of dialed down. And because we're currently going to a new moon, I mean, a new moon is happening tomorrow for me. So a lot of like self-reflection, it's mainly internal, but when the rituals happen, it's usually on the new moon or the full moon, and on the quarters if I'm doing something that has to do with either growing or lessening.
Hey, I like it. I want to go back to something you said earlier about sitting in church with family, and you are trying to call out to Jesus or God and ask them, like, explain yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, where do you really come from? All right. I don't care what the old bearded dudes are saying 2,000 years ago. Tell your story. So I'm guessing you got an answer or didn't, but I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, there's somewhere in one or two of your videos you've said that you're not deity focused in your craft. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. See, I pay attention. And
I appreciate it.
yeah. And so deities are not a part of your craft at all, or you just aren't centering your practice around them?
I just don't center my craft around them. So here's the thing is I don't work with them, right? I don't invoke them for my rituals or my spells, and I but I do feel that, and again, I'm skeptic, so I don't even know if I 100% believe in deities, or like I still don't know where I stand there, but you know, that's fine. I'm still figuring it out. But I have had certain deities reach out to me. You know, there's specific points in my life that one will just continually show up, and I don't know why. Like, they'll show up in certain ways that, you know, the name comes up, or somebody keeps talking about them, but it's different people, and it's just like all corresponding in the same way. And when they show up, I usually will research them, and in that there's a lesson. So it's more of, they kind of like show up and they're like, here's a little bit of a lesson, maybe take it and learn from it. And then once their lesson is kind of like said and done, I will construct altars and I will give them offerings, but I don't invoke them. So I hope that answers your question.
Hey, no, it's a hard question in a lot of way, and you're not alone. Most people, even myself, we go in and out of these conflicting notions of the nature of divinity and what it is that they are and their real impact on the world, and what should even our relationship be with them, and on and on and on. And I think some of that comes from just the broken relationship many people have with the religion of their childhood. Mm-hmm. But if you are a student of history, you'll find this notion throughout all of time that written history is available, of people doubting the existence of gods and struggling with that idea. But just as you said, you get these clues that are so consistent among diverse sources that you feel like something's trying to get your attention. And at the bare minimum, I think you're right that they are providing lessons. I think there's more there, but it's nice that you recognize that there are those lessons there, and you take what it is that serves you, and you have your boundaries.
Yeah, and you know, it's even if the deities don't exist, you know, the fact that they're, sorry, there's a microwave in the background.
It's all right. Somebody's got a burrito.
Oh yeah, I don't know if it's a burrito or what, but but the fact that it is still showing up, you know, how is that different than somebody meditating in nature and looking at a leaf and getting a lesson from that? You know, how is, I don't think that lessens the value of that at all, whether they be real or not. So you know, when people are like, oh, well, what if they're not real? That's fine. That's fine if they're not real. I still found value in those patterns and finding those. And I'm okay with them being real. I'm okay with them being not real. And even if and if they are, I still will leave offerings. And if they aren't, then the idea of like a physical setup of gratitude, I think, is nice, because then I feel less like I'm just taking it and being like, okay, thanks, instead of actually putting in the time of saying, I'm acknowledging this. Thank you.
Right. Well, since you've been in LA and establishing more of your practice and really becoming the woman that you are versus the constrained child that you were, what do you think has been the biggest challenge pursuing witchcraft in your studies, even now?
Stop sneezing in the background. It's okay. My biggest challenge, first going from Colorado to Los Angeles, just personally, it was a culture shock. But then I think pursuing those studies here, Los Angeles is such a bubble in itself. When people from out of the country visit, I always tell them, I'm like, you need to see the rest of the United States. Every piece of it has its own culture. But Los Angeles's culture is, it's very fluffy, and there's a lot of like, you can say literally anything here and you will step on somebody's toes. And that is one of the things that I think stunted my growth a lot, and is still stunting my growth as a creator, because I'm not somebody who is, I don't think I'm as nice as I seem in a lot of my videos. I think I'm a nice person, but I think I'm a little more aggressive, because everybody who has met me in person, who has seen my videos first, always say that. They're like, oh, wow, you curse a lot more in person, or like, oh, wow, you're a little more aggressive. And I think the reason I don't show that is because my persona, I guess, of the Witch of Wonderlust, she was created in Los Angeles. So, she takes on a lot of those ideas and those views. And it does get frustrating, because there are some things that even when you say them, when they have an objective truth to them, people will still fight you on them, even if it's not occult related. And so that was my biggest problem. Okay, I'm going to bring something up and you can decide if you want to add this in here or not. So one of the things is the biggest thing, and it's a big fancy new word, is cultural appropriation, right?
Right.
And one of the things that frustrated me the most was when I was talking to somebody who was, throwing this word around, and it got to the point that it was like, I think you're using this word and you don't know what this word means at this point, kind of like in The Princess Bride, where he's like, I think you're saying that word, you don't actually know what it means. She was talking about cultural appropriation in all these different ways, and people aren't, respecting like all these cultures, and that should stay in this, and da-da-da. And then she proceeds to tell me, oh, well, I'm a Reiki master. And I said, oh, that's really cool. And this was one, I'm relatively new of me hearing about Reiki. And I said, where did Reiki come from? And she said, what? And I said, where did Reiki come from? And she says, well, I'm just taking classes. I'm becoming one. And I said, right. The practice, where did Reiki come from? And she says, I think somewhere in the Middle East.
What?
And at that point, I kind of just looked at her and was like, okay, good to know. I'm going to pull out my phone and I'm going to Google it really quick so we can see where in the Middle East. Oh, Japan. And she was like, oh, yeah. And that part was the biggest. That's so frustrating to me, because, spirituality is so big in Los Angeles, but it's more of the idea of being a spiritual person than the actual practice and study of it. That's the biggest issue or challenge that I've faced. That it's, yeah.
Yeah. The biggest challenge is dealing with the controversy. in a lot of ways.
And the lack of information that a lot of the most controversial influenced people seem to have. You know, the most opinionated seem to have the least information, at least in my experience.
That can happen. You know, as a creator, my only advice, I mean, you're doing great on your own, but my only advice to you is, as a creator, and even in your witchcraft and anything else in life, the moment you have an opinion and you share it, you have an enemy.
Oh yeah.
So who cares? There's 7 billion people on this planet. The majority of them are never going to know who we are. The majority of them don't even know who Tom Brady is, or Brad Pitt, or, anybody. So even if the most famous people you can think of, in their respective realms, are still only famous to the tiniest portions of the population of mankind, who cares? Do you, and let your tribe find you. That's all I can say.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's see here. I know I'm going to get beat to death if I don't ask this question.
Okay.
And it concerns your dancing. A friend of mine is also, she's in her big exploration, sort of early baby witch days, as it were, and I'm helping her here and there. And she's also kind of has this background of dancing, and she's one of many who want me to bring this up. So my curiosity is, how much does your dancing impact your witchcraft, and your witchcraft impact your dancing? How blended are those worlds for you?
That's interesting that you bring it up, because a lot of people ask it, and I didn't think that it blended at all. I used to believe that they were totally different, but looking back after those questions got asked a lot, I do dance. So, I mean, for those of you who are in the zodiac realm, I don't use the zodiacs, but a lot of people will say, oh, everybody sees your Virgo sun on your channel, but then when you post videos, it's all your Aries moon. And I think I like to be able to connect to that aspect of myself, as well as a lot of the deities who have reached out to me are very much those like fiery female deities or spirits. And anytime I make offerings to them, I immediately am like, I kind of want to dance, like I don't know why there's always this thing that's like, oh, I kind of want to dance. I'm really feeling this song, or for some reason I'm just like restless and I have to get this out. So that is something that I've noticed is a very big connection. So I'm assuming that, I don't know if that's me just honoring them, if that's an offering or what, but they are connected in some way. As well as if I am doing any kind of baneful work, dancing, especially in like, especially with the slow and moody or like rock type of style, there's a lot of power. You feel powerful, and so that is a really good way to kind of rev up all of that energy to then put into that spell work. And then moons. I love dancing for moons. If I could be the person that's in the woods dancing around for the moon, I 100% would be. But for now, I have a pole in my apartment, so that is what I will use.
That's fair. No, good answer. I think that shows this real embodied practice that you've developed along with that. It's nice that you recognize, those sorts of things. So many questions. Yeah, I'm going to have to bring you back again, I guess.
Oh, that's fine. I'm also a very long-winded answer person, so.
No, you're the best kind of guest doing that.
Oh, great, good.
Yeah. So the only reason I and a lot of people know who you are is because you put so much content online. Why even put yourself out there like that? Why are you sharing that part of yourself?
Oh, what a good question. So again, we go back to my uncomfortable Tumblr days. And
Hmm.
I, for some reason, built a following there, even though I was only there to gain information. And a lot of people were asking me about something called Moonwater. And that was just because I didn't have tools, I didn't have access or knowledge of stores that I could purchase very specific occult items. So Moonwater was the best thing that I could do for a lot of things. And that it's such a simple concept, but people have so many questions about it, which I wasn't prepared for. But I decided, you know what? I've always liked making videos. I used to make very shitty vlogs um, for myself, just because that was a fun way for me to document. I really like building different skill sets, so that was just something that I did. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down, I'm going to make a video so that anytime somebody asks a question about Moonwater, I can just send them this link instead of sending them, a whole paragraph or going back and forth with the same questions over and over. So basically, I just wanted to have one place where I could cover one topic and answer multiple questions, and I could just send a link rather than use that energy and answer 50 of the same questions a day. So that was the start of it, and then people enjoyed it, and I was enjoying making videos. I continued to, and it snowballed from there.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, there's a ton of content on your channel. I could vouch for that,
yeah.
and
There's
and it's really good. I mean, you cover everything from your own style and practice, your own thoughts, box openings that people seem to love so much, book reviews, and all kinds of cool stuff. So I recommend people get out there and check it out.
Oh, thank you.
A couple things I like to get into before I end the show is let's start first with one of my favorite subjects. Olivia, have you ever experienced a haunting?
Yes.
Oh, now you have to tell us the story. That's the rule.
Oh. Okay, so I well, there was a few but this one is like, I guess, more interesting. So I had a friend, my best friend growing up. She had a friend that I very much didn't like, but she hung out with him a lot, and so I hung out with her, or I hung out with him to hang out with her as well. So it was just a whole thing, and we spent a majority of the time in his basement playing video games and hanging out with his friends. Well, basically, this was my high school years. My friend was the polar opposite of me. I was very uninterested in boys, in partying, in anything. I don't know. She's the opposite. She really liked boys. She really liked partying. So her and her friend and his brother would drink a lot. And we were hanging out in the basement, and they got so drunk, and his friend was kind of me also. So both of us are sober, the three of the other people are drunk. They leave the apartment, or they leave the house, and we can't find them. And when we're getting these weird phone calls from them, and they're like, oh well, I'm near the bridge, there's a lot of dogs here, and just like it's cutting out, and it was so weird. And we were like, my friend and I are kind of getting spooked out because it's approaching 3 a.m. We can't find any of these people. And finally we're driving around the neighborhood, and we pick up one of them, and he's just sitting on the side of the curb just giggling to himself. And we're like, this is weird. Is he on drugs? We take him home, and he just starts like mumbling things that we don't know what he's mumbling about. And my friend and I, who's sober, we were both Supernatural fans at the time, and I was like,
I like that show.
yeah. And I mean, well, it's over now, right? So but we were both kind of like, hey, he kind of seems possessed. Like, let's joke around and throw the exorcism at him. So we look it up and we start saying it. He's across the room, and we're whispering at him, and he launches at me for my neck.
Whoa.
And we were like, my friend had to pull him off me, and he was like cursing at me, and he was like, don't you ever fucking say that again. Don't you ever like, he was freaking out. The other two show up out of nowhere and have this statue, this like creepy creepy dog statue, and they kept it. So the next day, like, my friend and I are just shaken, and we're like, that was the worst form of babysitting ever. And we're shaken. The other three are hungover as all hell. And the next few days over the week, because we spent so much time there, things were falling off the shelves. There was like stomping up and down the stairs. There was like doors slamming. And all of these things did not happen over the previous weeks that we were hanging out there. And everybody was like going into deep depressions. It was so weird. Like, everybody was just like gone. And this was like the worst. I mean, I don't know what else could have caused it, but I'm chalking it up to something was brought up. Oh, that, and also I guess I should have mentioned in the very beginning that they were playing with Ouija boards, and obviously a bunch of white kids chilling with Ouija boards. We all know how that happens, especially when they're drunk and they don't set up protection and they don't, properly know anything about spirits. So for all I know, it could have just been a very bored spirit that just thought it'd be funny to mess with us. I don't know, but I left it. I was like, I didn't have the experience to even help them, so I was just like, I'm never going back there again. Good luck, have fun. And that was the end of it. And I haven't seen those two boys since. But that's one of the hauntings. That was probably the most intense. I guess I could go into more detail, but that's the short version.
Yeah, damn pesky white kids and their Ouija boards. Get off my yard.
Exactly. And the spirits are like, you want something interesting? Okay, sounds good.
Now, you made a little throwaway comment in there, and I can't let you get away with it. You're like, so we look up an exorcism and we did it, and he got pissed, he jumps up, grabs my throat or whatever. Like, what kind of exorcism do you find on the fly and then try to execute? What was it?
It was the one from Supernatural, which is why we thought it was a joke.
Oh, okay.
But Supernatural does a little bit of research, and apparently it's an actual exorcism that they say in the show. And so I only knew that afterwards, but I mean, the boy who launched at me claims to not remember anything. So you could either chalk it up to a bunch of teenagers just trying to screw with each other, but the fact that everybody was like just piling into a weird depression in the weeks after that, that's the part that I'm like, huh.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yep, as the old song says, things that make you go, All right. The another question I like to get into is every place has its own history. That's haunted places, the witchy kind of interesting people that are connected to the past of a place, landmarks of significance and power that you are either well known or you find yourself. So thinking of places that you've lived and maybe even places you've visited, what would be one of your favorite local folklores or places of power?
Ooh, places of power. Definitely Coos Bay, Oregon.
Bay, Oregon.
I mean, the town is strange. The people are very interesting, but I would visit there all the time with my family, and we would rent out a very large campsite, and that is one of the things that just like when I was a kid, I would leave the campsite and go on the trails and stuff and get lost in the woods by myself. And I swear to you, the trees whisper to you. I don't know what it is about the foggy, gloomy trees there, but there's something about it that it's they breathe. The whole forest breathes. Very, very strange.
No, that's absolutely true. A forest does indeed breathe.
It does. It's like that. It's so present there. Whereas I think like on a lot of trail hikes out here in California, it's very much just like there's just people going back and forth and like you don't experience the aliveness for the forest itself rather than like the people that are trafficking it.
Right. Okay. So I guess we're coming towards the end of the regular portion of the show. If there's something that I should have asked or something you'd like to talk about that I didn't cover, now would be a good time to bring it up. And if you don't, any parting thoughts that you would like to share?
Any parting thoughts? I would just say to your listener to be curious about anything that sparks your interest. Just do a Google search and go down the rabbit hole, because the simplest things have the strangest backgrounds. Believe me. So that is my parting thought.
Yep, that is a fact. Okay, Olivia, where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube at The Witch of Wonderlust. You can also find me on Instagram as The Witch of Wonderlust. I am on Twitter, but I don't use it very often, so maybe don't find me there.
Yeah. All right. And I'll make sure all those links are in the show notes, of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the time you gave to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I hope I can come back soon.
Absolutely. And for everybody out there listening, thank you for tuning in. As always, if you're new here, you're about to find out how to get more of this interview. We're going to go over to Patreon, where we get really weird and a little morbid. So if you want to get in on that, you're going to have to join the membership. Go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio or weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. Give me that high five. It comes around every month, and you get access to all the excellent archives of all these extended bonus portions. Stay weird out there, my friends. And it is bonus audio time. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Olivia says she's ready.
Mm-hmm.
First question around here, always the same. What famous person's resting place do you most want to visit?
Do you want to hear how they just answered that question? What famous person's resting place would you most like to visit? That and many others, including what they think about the afterlife, what they may or may not do in cemeteries, what are their traditions and magical practices that have to do with the dead, folklore that surrounds their homes, and so much more, available for only $5. $5 a month. Even if I make more than one episode in a month, it's still just $5 a month at patreon.com/weirdwebradio, or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. You can find me on Instagram at weirdwebradio. You can find me on Facebook as Weird Web Radio, or come join the new, fun and exciting Weird Web Radio Facebook group. Thank you again for being here. Stay weird out there, my friends.